Thanks for joining us today as we slowly come to the end of our program, sadly. But we're so excited for this very panel discussion. I personally was really excited for this one. I've been waiting for this one especially. So I hope you guys will also enjoy. I just wanted to really quickly introduce the session and why we're together again. So today we're welcoming Ida and Bayan. Thanks again so much for accepting the honor to be here. It really means a lot. Tonight's moderator will be Rossana. She has really beautiful questions for our panelists, and I cannot wait to witness her moderation on the stage. So excited for this one as well. So, and today's event will explore how Ida and Bayan craft visual narratives and inspire other artists and storytellers alike. So I'm actually slowly passing the ball to Rosanna for her moderation. And would like to thanks again to EU for co-funding this project for us. Once again, thanks so much for coming to our panel. Here, Rosanna, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you are well. So today I'll be the moderator for this session on storytelling in digital art, crafting compelling narratives for visibility. And with us, we have Bayan Dahdah and Ida Khazuli. I'll briefly introduce them, and then they'll have 2 presentations, each of them. And I'll let them speak, and then we'll have the session of questions. So Bayan comes from Dubai, and she's a multidisciplinary artist. And she's been working with a lot of different media. She has a lot of notable clients, and she'll explore her storytelling process with us, from traditional tools to digital ones. And she will be also telling us a bit of her own narrative through it. Then we have Ida. Ida, she's an architect, and she has been exploring AI tools and the new forms of architecture towards the future. She has also worked with the educational platforms, and she's been exhibited worldwide. So they have really distinct processes and methodologies of doing what they do. And I think it'll be very rich for us to think about it, and then have these 2 different experiences for us to share and explore our very own questions. So I'll let Bayan speak now. And thank you, Bayan.
Thank you, Rosanna, for the really nice intro. And it's lovely to meet you all. I'm here in Dubai. It's 10 p.m., but this is exactly what I want to be doing. I wouldn't be anywhere else. So I'm really happy and honored that you guys came to listen to me ramble today. So yeah, I'll share my screen and we can get started. Okay. So I'm going to take you through the presentation in a story format as well, since it's already part of my work. So I thought I'd continue Yes.
First, let me interrupt you. It's again not the whole screen.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Let me fix that. Sorry, guys. Share my desktop. This is full screen, right? Now?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries. So, yeah. I'm giving this presentation as if it was a story, but the story is true. It's based on my life and how I got to where I am today with my work. So like Rosanna said, I'm Bayan. I'm a multidisciplinary designer, and I'm based in Dubai. I've been based here for a couple of years now, and I work as a freelancer. So that means my clients range. I work with NGOs, luxury fashion, food and beverage, government institutions, and yeah, so things like from National Geographic to Hermes to UNICEF. So it keeps my life and my work very interesting all the time. And although the clients all vary in industry, there's one common thread that connects all the work that I do, and I think why I work with these different institutions. And they all come from one thing, which is storytelling. It's such a big fabric of our life. So of course it exists in all different industries. So let me tell you a bit about my story and how I got here. So as a child and in my teens, I was a little bit of a headless chicken when it came to my interests. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I liked so many things. And then I was jumping from photography to graphic design to filmmaking to fashion, and I really couldn't choose what I wanted to do. I eventually went on to study architecture. It was the hardest art-related subject in my mind. So I thought maybe if I study that, I can go into any artistic field after that. And a lot of my family members are architects. My mom's an architect, uncles, cousins, etc. So while at university, I started to get into travel photography. So many people were at the time. And this is where my love of documentation began. So this is a photograph I took in Cuba. This is a photograph in Morocco. I eventually, and I also didn't want to leave behind my other favorite method of documentation, which was sketching. So these were sketches done in Florence, in Italy. This was in Versailles. Tell me if you guys want me to slow down. I can't see your reactions. And I was enjoying the process, but at this point I had all this really unoriginal material and I had nothing to do with it. So a bunch of photography, nothing that special about them, a bunch of sketches, nothing that special, nothing that no one has ever seen before. So I began combining and overlaying these two mediums until it began to sort of evolve into a digital scrapbook. So this is an example of a day spent in Kotor in Montenegro. It's just like, nice overlays, quite aesthetic, of different sketches, texts that I wrote, photographs. This was actually a Lebanese wedding in the middle of Montenegro, which I was surprised to find. But still, I really wasn't fully satisfied. It lacked a bit of substance for me. And as I was going through life's trials and tribulations, I felt I had more to share and more to say than simply just retelling my travel journeys. I started using it as a way to share some insecurities. This is an illustration, or like a cartoony illustration I did maybe in 2016. Some things are in Arabic. I don't know if people will understand, but it's like a menu of all the different anxieties that I had at the time. I thought I was clever. And then as a way to navigate the confusion and absurdity of being an Arab woman today and what that means. So I'm originally Palestinian, and there's a lot of questions and, about identity when it comes to that. Where is home for me? I've never lived there. I probably will never live there, living in Dubai, etc. So I had a lot of questions that were unanswered, and I was trying to figure them out through my work. So this is a series that I worked on, and I started working on these little series and posting them all on my Instagram. So my Instagram sort of became this personal visual journal. This particular series, it's actually 3 posts that I joined together. And I don't know if it's the same in your cultures, but in our culture, and my last name tells people everything they need to know. Not everything, a lot of information they need to know about me, where I'm from, what my religion is, what any family businesses was. And I really hated this growing up. I didn't like that my last name was being introduced to people before I was. Sorry, that's a little off tangent, but this is the way I started to explore these things visually. So yes, it became my Instagram became this flowing visual diary, exhibiting realizations I was having, retelling memories from childhood. This is another example. I went out to dinner with friends and we had such an interesting conversation, and people were talking about books they read and films they watched, and I wanted to remember everything. And I was like keeping mental notes. And then as soon as I got home, I wrote everything down, and I kind of illustrated the evolution of dinner conversation that we had. This is about a very talented architect and artist in Jordan. I went to visit his studio, and this was just like me going back to my architectural roots and examining this further. when I started, documenting these things visually, I started using it as an archival way as well. So when I didn't really know what to do, I learned that lots of things were rooted in my childhood, leading me to unearth some gems. This is me again talking about my insecurities as an Arab girl growing up in a very English school. I was one of the only Arab girls on all the sports teams, and this is actually a scan of a note that I had written maybe when I was 10 or 11, that I wanted to be blonde and I wanted blue eyes. And it's all tied in with the sport, this very British sport called netball. I don't know if anybody's familiar with netball. And then I was just really finding ways to visually represent all these nuanced discoveries that I was making, or realizations from my past or from my presence. It helped me make sense of them. And then soon I started discovering that people were identifying with these things that I was sharing. I didn't know that at the time that it was a form of storytelling, but it essentially was. So I fell into this multimedia form of storytelling by complete accident. I was just following what felt natural to me. And it helps that my parents are very good archivists. They keep everything from photographs to old drawings to notes that throughout my whole life. So I have everything, very nicely documented at home. So my style led me to work on some cool projects, and which meant that I was starting to tell other people's stories. So people were coming to my Instagram, seeing what I was doing, and slowly evolved into my professional work. Oops. So I work with this photojournalist a lot. Her name is Tania Habjouqa. She's an American Jordanian photojournalist based in Ramallah in Palestine. And she found my work, and she was also looking for the same thing. She wanted to move away from just pure photography and start enriching her stories that she was telling with more forms of media. So she was really getting to know her subjects, and she was passing on the information to me, and I would represent that visually. So I worked with her on a photo book of hers. This is a completely different example. I worked with the Departure of Culture and Tourism in Abu Dhabi here in the UAE, and they wanted to work on a little magazine or book of all the secret hidden gems restaurants in Abu Dhabi. And they wanted it to feel like it was like a scrapbook put together that anybody that could just pick up and look at. This was a project that I did with National Geographic in COVID. They wanted me to create a piece of artwork based on a bunch of their old archival magazines. So they sent me scans from like the 1800s, 1900. I don't even know if it was around the 1800s. I can't remember the exact dates, but very old archives. And they're like, we want to see what you can create with the work that we have. So there's actually a meaning and a story to all this, which I won't get into now because it'll take too long, but an example. And now it's a part of their archive. So all of this work is done by following one simple rule that I feel has worked for me up until today, which is everything is an ingredient, by which I mean any found object, any note, item of belonging, a scent, a texture, a memoir, text message, material, anything, the list goes on, is just a piece of the puzzle that can further perpetuate your story. And I still work this way today. Everything is an ingredient. And then I started when I started teaching the way I work, I tried to reduce it down to a series of prompt questions to get some of my students thinking outside of their usual methods. So I thought of a series of prompt questions, and I still come back to this slide whenever I'm stuck on a project. So is there an existing video that supports the story I'm telling? Is there a text or a diary entry somewhere? Is there a newspaper clipping? If there isn't anything existing, what can I draw? What can I recreate to feed my story? Is there a song or a song lyric that is relevant? Is there any poetry, film references, objects, physical materials? So these prompts really help get you thinking in a multisensory way. And now the two main ways in which I work, so knowing that I have this idea of ingredients, I work in, two ways. So investigative versus creative. And I'll start with the investigative way of working. It's usually when I don't really have a particular story in mind, but I'm itching to create something. I'll dig through some old photographs or old archives of my own or somebody else's. And then eventually, 100% of the time, a story will reveal itself to me. And this is an example of investigative way of working. I was bored with my fashion sense. This was maybe 2019. And I wanted to look through my mom's old photo albums for some inspiration. I was going for like a more vintage look of clothes. And I started scanning all these photos of her of her clothes, sorry. And then she walked in on me while I was scanning them. And she's like, oh, the Nike sneakers you see me wearing on the right, I couldn't afford them till like I wanted them for so many years. I couldn't afford them until her sister, my aunt, moved to Abu Dhabi and bought them for me and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? Like, how come you couldn't afford just Nike sneakers? Then it went on to how the discussion evolved into, my grandparents were refugees from Palestine to Jordan. My mom was the youngest of 7 kids. She only ever got the hand-me-downs of all her older siblings. They couldn't afford to buy new clothes. So everything that she's wearing in all of these photos is all hand-me-downs from her older sisters and brothers even. And so just a simple story of me looking into these shoes or me looking into this fashion evolved into this much bigger, generational story of my grandparents' journey from Palestine to Jordan and what that meant and leaving behind all of their things and what effect that had on my parents or my mom specifically. And then there's the more creative way of working. And this is when I have a specific story in mind. There's something I want to express. There's something I want to reveal. I need to now find material that supports my story. So this is again where I start looking at all these prompts and ingredients, and it can literally be anything that will support my story. And then if it doesn't exist, like I mentioned, recreate it. So photograph it, stage it, draw it, design it online, anything you can do to just, there's also beauty in recreating things that don't exist. And the past example was an example of this. I knew I wanted to talk about issues with my family name. I found a TED Talk that talked about this and I quoted the TED Talk. I found a photo of me when I was on the day that I was born and I put this little bow around it because it's like here Bayan comes in like a package deal. And yeah, so I found material that supports my story. And now I'm going to go on to my more recent work and how I now storytell for others. Sorry, I just realized that was a really big jump visually. This is one of my most recent projects here in Dubai. I worked with the Michelin star chef here. His name is Suleiman Haddad. He has a Michelin star restaurant called Moonrise, and he was launching his new menu. It's a 12-course menu. And he came to me and he's like, Bayan, I want an illustration for each course. So I thought I was going to be drawing the food itself. And, I was very happy to show him all the illustrations of his meals. And he's like, no, this is not what I want at all. I want to capture the essence of the each course. I don't want to illustrate the course. The meal is going to be right there. So I worked very closely with him, and chefs can be quite particular about the things they like and don't like. And it was a really challenging project, but yeah, for an example, on the middle right one, there's like a kaleidoscopic image, and he has a dish with sumac. Do you guys know what sumac is? It's a type of, very delicious spice, I think it is, or a herb, I'm not sure. It's a fruit originally, and he was trained in Japan, so he has a sumac hamachi tuna dish, which is phenomenal. And he wanted to talk about the versatility of sumac, how it can be used across all different cultures, even though it's a very, it's a very regional spice. And the sumac that he uses in his Michelin star restaurant is actually their accountant's mother's sumac from Syria. And he wanted to really talk about how versatile an ingredient it is. And he's like, Bayan, I want you to show me the versatility of sumac. I'm like, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this? Like, how can I capture? It's such a hard thing to draw. And he doesn't want anything very explicit. He wanted to be very gently implied and conceptual. So I mean, just one day I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna draw the sumac fruit in a kaleidoscope form to talk about all the infinite possibilities of the use of sumac. So that was the story of one of those courses. I won't go into all of them. I work a lot with this gallery here in Dubai called Gulf Photo Plus. They're a fantastic photography exhibition space. And I work a lot to brand their exhibitions. So they give me the material from the exhibition itself, and they tell me to, capture the theme of the exhibition in the poster. Also a challenging task. I worked eventually working with a lot of photojournalists meant that I worked on a book, and I designed a full book. This is a photographer, photojournalist called Rehab al-Dalil. She's Egyptian, and she spent 10 years in Sinai living with a Bedouin family and like coming and going. And she documented so much all the women in the tribe and their practices and how they use all the herbs and natural plants in their tribe as for medicinal use. And so she came to me, she's like, I have photographs, I have like data on plants, I have handwritten notes from them. She's like, I want to work with you. I want like a multimedia style photo book. So this was the result of that. And yeah, I don't know if I would talked for too long or too short, but that's what I've got for you guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Bayan. That was perfect. Thank you so much for your generous presentation where you went through even your own very own storytelling process. So thank you so much. And now I would just like to briefly say something, because I didn't say that Ida comes from Iran, and I'm sure that also her background has a lot of also saying on her inspiration for architecture too. And I'll let her speak. So thank you.
Thank you, Rossana. Thank you, Bayan. Your presentation was really interesting and artistic. What you actually did was you told a story about storytelling. It was really nice.
So much.
Yeah. And what really captivates me is that your approach is very artistic and mine is kind of scientific. And I'm going to talk about it. Let me share my screen and let me go through my presentation. Okay, do you have my screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just hide this panel. Okay. Well, as I said, my name is Aida. I'm an Iranian architect and artist currently based in Iran. It's been almost a year since I started experimenting with AI tools in the realm of architecture and design. And today I'm going to talk about the narrative aspect of my work, kind of what is behind every piece that I create. So to give you a heads up, first, I'm going to talk about the concept of narrative-driven design. Then I'm going to talk about a few principles through examples of my work and how I use those principles to create the work that I do. Next, I'm going to delve deeper into the why and the how, meaning why I do my work the way I do and how I present them for visibility. And at the end, I'm also going to talk about a few tips and talk about a few tools that I use. So what is narrative-driven design? Narrative-driven design is the integration of narrative elements into the design of spaces. And what does it mean? It means while developing ideas for spaces, going beyond the functional aspects and creating spaces that evoke emotions, tell a story, or convey a specific message. So you could say that designers who try to incorporate narrative elements, they're trying to do more than designing physical spaces that just work. They're designing experiences and add some sort of quality to the space that goes beyond mere engineering. So around a year ago, when AI-generated art and design was booming, I tried to observe what sort of content was being generated, what was trending, and if I even wanted to follow that trend. What I observed was as AI is really, really good at blending stuff with an excellent quality. I saw a lot of kitsch architecture on social media, and asking myself if this is the trend that I should move towards or I should move against, because it's very important to be mindful in the world of social media and analyze trends to see if they have any meaningful roots. Because not all trends are bad, but most of them usually are. So I started reading a few books to kind of find my direction and the design direction that I want to move towards. I read the book Kitchen Art. This is a very old book, and I read it to sort of move away and against creating kitsch. And then I read the book Designing Experiences, because that was what I tried to move towards. I really cared about how people will experience and interact with the space, what emotions or feelings it should evoke, and how it can communicate a specific story or concept. So it was through these observations, reflections, studies, and analysis that I sort of crafted my approach in creating content. So here are a few principles that I use in creating spatial qualities. Some of them I learned while studying and in books. Some of them come from my own personal observations and experience, and I'm going to talk about them through a few examples of my works. I'm going to talk about spatial sequencing, materials, lighting, symbolism, multisensory elements, scale and proportion, architectural details, interactive elements, storytelling through layout, flexibility, and multifunctionality, and context-driven design. This is one of my early works. I named it Shinrin Yoku. It means forest bathing in English. It's basically a Japanese concept that has become international and has nothing to do with bathing in the nature. It means, I mean, when you hear it first, you might think that, but that's what I thought at the beginning, but it's not, it's something else. So forest bathing means fully immersing yourself in the natural environment, like forests, for psychological and physiological benefits. So I had that in my mind when I was developing this concept. I wanted it to feel like some form of experience. So I created different stages and sequences that people pass through. I tried incorporating architectural elements and structures in the experiences, kind of like blending architecture and nature to create that wow effect. And for that, I used natural elements such as mushrooms, lotuses, sunflowers, for the structures to create some form of connection with nature. And also matter a lot. And this is an immersive nature experience. I chose wooden and natural tones and materials for the whole thing. I also cared a lot that the spaces involve more than only one sense. For example, in this waterfall images, you can feel the drops of water touching your skin. Or for example, in some other scenes, I paid attention that people can touch the leaves of trees when passing through the bridges. Waterfalls also add the element of sound to the space. The sound of water also acts as another sensory element in this experience. This is a temporary urban hangout concept that I'm also in love with. I was looking for multifunctionality and playfulness at the same time. At the beginning, I was looking for an urban light sculpture, and that had seating elements. And when I was thinking about seating, I was thinking, how can it be used in different scenarios? Like, how can people sit as groups while also unlocking the possibility for others to sit as individuals without interrupting the group? So the outward seats here, they can be used as individual seats because of the geometric form of the circle, and the inward seats can be used as group hangouts and spaces people can gather, spend time, talk, eat, play board games, and do lots of other stuff. I remember this post was shared a lot, and so many people were asking, like, where is this place? I searched for it on Google and on the whole internet and didn't find it. I want to spend time with my friends there. And, I think that was one of the underlying reasons for its success, that it displayed a space for group activities. I chose the form of a mushroom for adding that whimsical, playful aspect, because a mushroom somehow looks like some form of shelter, and the inflatable material is being used for both that playful vibe and also to suggest temporary space activation. like structures that could easily be set up and put down in, for example, different seasons or different places. So as you see, everything here has a reason and a story behind it, and they're interwoven, and you can't separate them from each other. This is another concept that I developed in collaboration with a friend for the Venice Design Week exhibition. I actually named the series Architectural Narratives. And here I was literally trying to push AI to develop a narrative for me for a war memorial park in Syria. It was a question for me that can AI be used to develop the whole narrative? So the entire narrative for the series was developed in collaboration with ChatGPT and then visualized with Midjourney. It took around a week to create a nice cohesive narrative for the whole park. I was looking for some form of a linear stage-by-stage narrative that kind of symbolized the journey that the Syrians went through. It started with the entrance, a sculpture park with deconstructed, distorted sculptures and that symbolized the destruction phase of the war. Then passing through a bridge named the Bridge of Hope, which symbolized moving on from war and destruction to peace and prosperity and a more hopeful future, and reaching and gathering around the water fountain, which is a symbol of hope. I use lotus as a symbol to develop the form of the water fountain, because it, the lotus kind of it's a symbol of hope and resilience. I also incorporated context-specific elements such as arches or mosaic art specific to the Middle East. I was careful with the materials for every stage, choosing concrete for the earlier stages to create that sense of monotony and coldness, but using lighting elements to add to the scenes and to also infuse some form of hope in them. I didn't display all the images here, but in my profile, there are 3 different collections that I curated for this series. They might lack cohesiveness and some details, but we can already see the immense potential AI has for developing narratives in collaboration with humans. This project is a residential interior that is also one of my favorites. Here I was exploring the intersection of architecture and furniture and how different spaces and furniture could be layered in a vertical style to create unique spatial relationships and also multifunctional spaces. These are concepts that I'm particularly in love with. When I look at such images, I start developing scenarios in my head, like how can this cave-like space be used and how it could offer visual connection with the space in front of it. For example, a mother is sitting at her desk working while her daughter is reading a book in front of her, and how, for example, in the right image, a stair has turned into a desk and a study area, and how it offers visual and physical connection with the outside and the space in front of it. It's very enjoyable for me to think about such spatial relationships as they allow me to do scenarios for them in my head and creating unique ways spaces find and experienced. Well, I'm an avid reader. I honestly love books so much, and I believe when I first tried Midjourney, the very first prompt I wrote was a library concept. I usually play with accesses such as corridors or stairs to create a sense of exploration and movement within the space, because access spaces are spaces that we move through, and generally in architecture projects, they usually are taken for granted. No one really cares about them. And most of the time, architects try to minimize access spaces and corridors, but these spaces, if designed well, can really add to the experiential aspect of space because they sort of connect everything together. And here I try to break down a larger space into smaller connected spaces for a more human-centric feel. It just feels nice. It feels nice when, for example, you go to the upper level, sit there and read in a more intimate space while also being visually connected with other areas of the space. This spatial concept also follows the previous one. try to develop smaller interconnected spaces in a large space to create that sense of privacy. It's an environmental psychology theory called a theory of prospect and it states that people usually feel good and safe in spaces that are open and provide a wide range of sight while also offering shelter and safety. I also incorporated natural wooden tones and biophilic design to add to that pleasant feeling of space. This concept is a few product. I named it the Flexi Canvas. It was actually commissioned for Wired magazine that the did by experts for different tech gadgets and how they will probably look like in the year 2050. What I did was connecting all the stories together and create a concept. So based on the descriptions and my perspective, I figured that the use of screens in the future will become mainly digital and physical screens might be minimized in production while still existent. So I thought of the TV of the future as a modular and flexible system that could connect with some sort of magnetic connection and could also be interactive, such as phones and tablets. And the parts could be removed easily and used as physical tablets or any sort of physical screens that we might need. So as we see, a large part of the storytelling goes into the why of the concept, like why it turned out the way it did. And this is the last example that is also a product. I added this here because it might be an example of thinking more poetically and how it could help us develop objects with AI. The prompt for this object was something like this, a colorful or a rainbow-like chair or a beanbag chair in the style of the knitted waves of the ocean. And you can see how the waves happened and, crystallized as the texture on the chair. Okay, next, we're gonna go through the why. Like why I do the things the way I do and what I'm influenced by. I'm gonna talk about the importance of architects being futurists, my background as an architect, my background as a flexibility expert, my overall public knowledge, my personal experiences, my ideas, my opinions, and how I view the world. Okay, I think overall and specifically at this moment in time, it is very important for architects to develop a futuristic approach because the change that is happening right now in the world is going at a tremendous speed like never before. And architects are the people who are actually responsible for shaping it. So we need to make sure that the world we are building is future-proof. The buildings or spaces that architects build at present are some form of bridges that fill the gap between the past and the future. As architects, we spend a lot of time at universities to learn about classic architecture and historical periods. And we also learned about up-to-date technologies and design-related knowledge, but we never had any courses that explored the future to prepare us for what lies ahead. I think it's a missing piece in education, and I'm not sure if there's a course at the moment that is being offered, but when I was a student, we didn't have any such courses. So I think it's very important to analyze the past, the present, and analyze the trends to find out what might lie ahead and what trend we need to embrace and why, and what trends we need to fight against. For example, climate change is a trend that we need to act on. We need to design buildings that are more sustainable and eco-friendly and have a low carbon footprint. On the other hand, playfulness is a trend that I believe is a positive trend, which is going to help people have more fun, feel less stressed, become more creative, and even learn better. So my futuristic approach might not seem so futuristic as other people think of the future, like robotic, minimalistic, large, wide spaces with trains and cars flying around. Instead, it looks more sustainable, playful, more rich and colorful and personalized and human-centered and fun. And I developed this view by both analyzing the current trends and also my own personal preferences. Another reason behind the why is my background. I worked and did research for 2 or 3 years on flexibility in architecture, and I think that has had a huge influence on how and why I think the way I do. I sort of approach everything with a multifunctional aspect in mind. I remember specifically working on this residential project during my thesis. It was a 3-leveled apartment building that could function in 9 different ways. And in order to develop these 9 alternatives, I needed to think of multiple scenarios, like how would the building function if grandparents were added to the family? Or what difference would it make for the family to have 2 boys or 2 girls, or a girl and a boy? Or what if the family wanted to change the function of part of the ground floor to the commercial? Or what if the family shrunk and wanted to rent part of the house to another family? And lots of other questions like these that kind of made my mind think in a narrative-driven way. I also love traveling, and I learn a lot from historical architecture. I think it has a lot to teach us. I worked on a research project for an article on Persian traditional houses, which was also related to flexibility. And what we were trying to do was analyzing the spatial relationships of these spaces, how they were connected, and how they made the space flexible. So I traveled and visited these houses. There were like 10 houses. These images that you see here, these are actually parts of these places. And after carefully spending time in each of them, I analyzed their spatial relationships, how they were each autonomous and independent while also allowing unity. Like when you close these doors, you have small independent rooms, but when you open the doors, you will have one unified whole that is both physically and visually connected. This is the concept of interconnection that I learned and fell in love with, and I use that a lot in nearly all of my work. I talked about this earlier, that how I developed this whole futuristic approach and how my futuristic vision looks like. I think play is gonna have a very important role in the future of all spaces because it has the potential to increase the quality of everything, the quality of social gatherings, the quality of work, the quality of education, overall the quality of life. And it has been underestimated for a long time. So I play with the concept of play a lot. I create spaces with it. I incorporate it in forms, in relationships with technology, and I try to craft unique stories that other people might not have thought of. Okay, next, I'm going to talk about the how, meaning some tips I subconsciously learned through years by experience to increase visibility, and also how I incorporate them into my work. The hows I'm going to talk about here, I mostly learned and used them subconsciously. Actually, almost everything I talked about today, I use them in my work subconsciously. And I'm a type of person that I learn by heavily exposing myself to relevant content. I sort of immerse myself in it. I learned a lot of things this way and learned them in a way that I wasn't even aware that I'm learning. I'm like, I know I read like crazy. I read all sorts of things and all sorts of topics, and everything kind of gets blended in my mind. And then after some time, I suddenly know what to do. And if someone asks me how I do it, I wouldn't know how to answer them. And that's why it was challenging for me actually to craft this presentation, because I had to like travel into my mind and organize everything. Because, you know, I know them, I just need to find them to access them. And it kind of takes some time and energy. So I'm going to talk about visual identity, consistency, variety, high quality imagery, storytelling through grids, authenticity, and originality. First is visual identity. This is a very important aspect that everyone needs to consider and think about. This is something that differentiates your work in a visual sort of way. You can differentiate yourself by your approach or your design philosophy, but those things are not visual. You need to explain them, talk about them so that people would understand. So if you really want to stand out, you need to differentiate yourself visually as well. And it is mostly aesthetics. I do that through colors and forms and also spatial qualities. This is the architectural model, and it's one of my earlier works. It went viral, and I think it hit like 240K likes, 5 million views. And it's a blend between Persian and modern architecture, some sort of intersection between architecture and sculpture. And when I look at it more closely, I see that it really displayed my visual identity. It is playful, it is minimal, soft curved forms broken into different smaller spaces, greenery incorporated into it, and also a soft-colored color palette. It had all the elements that are still visible in my later works. So you can say these are one of those invisible lines that connect all my works together. Consistency is also very important, both in posting on social media and also consistency in work like the aesthetics that I just talked about. I remember I grew the most when I posted daily, so it's very important to keep that in mind. I also care a lot about variety. It is mostly a personal preference. I mostly like touching and working on different things, but with a unique and consistent approach in aesthetics and philosophy. Having variety in your work also fosters more engagement as it allows you to reach different people every time. It prevents monotony and prevents your work from being boring and helps you build a more well-rounded brand. The quality of the image is also really, really important. Always post with these issues in mind. I usually lean more towards photorealism. I post images that people usually mistake with actual photos, and I avoid render-like visualizations. But this is also a matter of personal preference. Just make sure to post the highest quality of your work that is possible. About the grids, that the approach that I have, which is sort of the opposite of Bayan's approach, it's a non-linear one. I love doing that at the beginning because the whole grid, when you look at it, it's like a piece of art, and it shows the amount of thought and plan that has gone into it. And I wanted to do something like that at the beginning, but I noticed that it is stopping me from posting and creating work. I was at a stage that I just needed to let go. So I said to myself that I won't care about such aspects and just deal with it later. But after some time passed, I noticed people telling me that I have a unique approach or style or some specific art direction. And this was something that I had not planned for. It kind of happened subconsciously. So for my grid, each post is independent and tells a separate story, but the whole grid is also somehow connected through the approach and aesthetics. It's like I'm trying to build a world around my unique vision by tapping into various ideas and spaces and creating immersive experiences for each one. This is called storyscaping, and it is a little bit different from storytelling as it has a non-linear approach and it is more immersive. I think authenticity and being true to yourself is also very important. I only work on ideas and concepts that I'm in love with or I'm obsessed with. I never cared about the number of followers. I never did anything opposed to my own belief, only to gain followers. Originality is the last one. You need to embrace your unique perspectives and vision. I found it pretty interesting at the beginning that no one thought the way I did, and a lot of people found value in the way I was thinking. So don't be afraid to show people how you think, your ideas, as unconventional as they might sound. In order to develop unique perspectives, you need to go beyond the field you majored in. You need to expose yourself to different people, different ideas. You need to continuously learn stuff. And I also generally avoid trends. It's not like that I can say all trends are bad. This is not true. Some trends have very reasonable roots and causes, but it is important to analyze them before going, with the flow. I usually avoid most trends. Like when I see something constantly being done by so many people, I usually don't go even near it. But for example, AI was also a trend. I actually moved towards it before so many people. So that the time I started, it had not turned into a trend. But I believe this is something that has very well-rounded underlying reasons behind it. So it is going to continue to develop, and it's not a passing fad. So the important thing is analyzing trends before just jumping at them. And yeah, here's our a few tools and technical skills. I use AI text to image tools. I specifically use Midjourney. I have not had experience with Stable Diffusion and DALL-E. And I also use ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas and concepts. And here are also a few tips. Be a curious person, embrace curiosity, read, study, and learn in various fields. Read wide, learn wide, and get diverse experiences. And something that is really, I think it has helped me a lot, is that I am a proactive content consumer on social media. I mean, meaning that because we spend a lot of our time on social media, it's very important to not just passively see what the social media is showing you. It's very important that you search and find the things that you want to see and engage with them so that you can see more of them, kind of designing what you want to see. And I think it will immensely improve the quality of your work in the future. So yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope I didn't bore you.
Thank you, Ida. It was amazing. Quite the opposite. It was really, really interesting and very generous too. Both of you had shared with us your also personal experiences and of course your artistic approaches on storytelling. And now it's time for maybe some questions and a bit of discussion of it. So I'll leave the participants to think a bit if you have any questions. But I would like to say something to both of you, and it's not quite a question, but it's a comment, and I'd love to talk about it further, maybe. Both of you had shared with us a bit of your own background and your stories, which is very important to an artistic approach. And it's very interesting because it talks about your past, and now you're working towards the future. And also from a more traditional kind of media background and etc., to new forms of doing things and designing and transporting experiences, your own narratives, but also other people's narratives, both of you, Bayan and Ida, to these new forms or ways of working. So I'd like you to comment a bit on it and maybe talk to each other or maybe share a bit of that kind of experiences.
Okay, I might start. What I found really interesting in Bayan's talk was that she also had the same feeling that I did. Like she said that I wasn't aware what I was doing. I had the same feeling when I was doing it, and it was interesting. And for me, I think my experiences, my background influenced me a lot, and I wasn't really aware. And what actually differentiates my work from other people, from other AI creators, might be that I try to incorporate everything into my work, my opinions, my vision, my knowledge and experiences and expertise, and try to blend everything into one unified whole. And yeah, this is something that's I think that's what makes a good story for the work.
Yeah, I think that's what we have in common, definitely. And I always think there have been times where I've mistakenly hopped on trends that weren't for me. And then I always go back to the thought that truth can never go wrong. You can never go wrong with the truth. You can never go wrong with your own experiences. In my case, a lot of the time, like as an example, I find it a little bit complicated to say that, you know, to advertise myself as a Palestinian artist, because there are a lot of Palestinian artists in Palestine. And sometimes when if I advertise myself as that, I have never, suffered a day in my life for being Palestinian. I've had a very privileged life. So sometimes it can come across as a little bit offensive, it's like I'm capitalizing on the cause, or I'm capitalizing on their struggle and using it for my own benefit when I never actually struggled. So I spent a lot of time with this question, and then I'm like, you know what? The only thing I can do is talk about my own experiences. Nobody can argue with my own experience. It's the truth. So that's what led me a lot of the time to go back to, you've given me hope to start working in the way of looking in the future. I'm someone who looks to the past. I'm someone who's scared of the future, and I've been scared of AI. And now that I've seen your presentation, you give me hope for how it can be, how it can be utilized properly. And so definitely, I think I need to maybe stop being so reflective and stop looking at the past so much in my work.
I actually love the reflective part of your work, but it's very it's good to embrace newer technologies also as well. And I also like the point that you mentioned, that you look at everything as an ingredient.
Yes.
Because I actually have the same approach. I try to use everything that I know and everything that I love, everything that I'm obsessed with into my work. And
I was going to say that that part is also, it connects you a lot.
Yeah.
That everything that goes through your life, you take it and you integrate it in your very own process, which is very interesting and really approaches you too.
Yeah.
So do we have maybe from the audience now some questions? Well, maybe it's too soon, but we'll wait a bit. And oh, there's one here. There's one here. Do you want, Mustafa, do you want to say it, or should I? Or maybe it's for Bayan. Yeah, you can read it.
Okay. In the chat. And I saw he asked it earlier, but I really can't remember what the theme of that project was. I need to, if you give me a few minutes, let me dig up my notes, because I did it in 2020 and my mind is fried. I actually can't remember what the theme was. It wasn't to do with botanical gardens. Let me dig it up and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. So yes, we can go to Sude. Do you want to ask your question maybe while Bayan is looking for the information?
Yeah, I have a question for Bayan. I hope it's the right pronunciation. Thank you for the presentation. It was like so inspiring. Like, I'm also trying to do illustrations. Like, it's really cool, like how we are looking at our lives and for inspiration. And my question is, how did you you studied architecture, right? As if I remember correct. How did you decide it? Because I'm sure that like your family or your friends, the people around you, like, you studied this, like you can be an architect and do this, do other stuff. I mean, for us, it's all design, but it's kind of drastic change because I have the same thing right now. So I really need advice that how to be that brave, because I think it's brave. So yeah, thank you.
I mean, I found architecture too difficult. That's the truth. I wasn't good at it, I don't think. I worked in a lot of different fields. So I worked for 5 years in full-time jobs before I went freelance. The first year I worked in an architectural, like urban planning research studio. And at the time I was very involved with a film institute where I grew up. And I was volunteering when I was in school. So I'm like, you know what, let me try work for them for a year or two. That's when I went to work in filmmaking, picked up the art of storytelling and narrative from filmmaking. And then I always knew how to draw. And I think in architecture school, you still draw a lot. I didn't lose it. And then I don't know how I ended up in a branding agency. And this really sharpened my digital skills. So the use of Illustrator, Photoshop, and etc. And it was when I was in the branding agency, which I really didn't enjoy working there. I was starting to work on my Instagram posts. And then from there, I started to get clients and then ended up now freelancing. But I'm not sure what you studied or how drastic the changes, but
Well,
now
interior architecture. So,
you studied, sorry?
interior architecture.
And you want to move more into illustration?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think the link is there, definitely. I mean, I still do a lot of branding and more corporate work, which I'm not proud of and I don't like to show, but it's just to give, it's for money. But I use that, like the projects that I showed you are the projects where I'm really passionate about, but my life still consists of a lot of very corporate branding work. So the dream is to one day be a full-time illustrator. And I know that's easier said than done, but I think you can do anything really, especially in today's age. I would just, suggest to keep constantly sharing your work. Like Ida said, consistency is key. Keep sharing it, keep sharing the behind the scenes of how you do it. And yeah, and then hopefully you can work from there. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there's also a comment here about the past, present, and future, and you need all of them, and I think it really represents both of your work, that you're working with time and answering really contemporary questions, which I think is what you have to do in art and all artistic forms. Anyone else for another question or comment? Also, I wanted to just underline that the way that both of you work with the multisensory elements, like through multidisciplinarity or multimedia, or also with the other multi tools, and I think that also makes it very human, very relatable in terms of experience, and I think that's a great way to state what you want to have in the future and to potentiate what we have in front of us. So I just wanted to comment on that too.
Yeah, exactly. I think I use that a lot, because what I've been trying to do all this time was trying to create spaces that people love to spend time in. And when people see my work and comment and share and write that, I see that I'm moving in the right direction. It feels like I'm moving in the right direction. And also, I wanted to highlight that I have a very self-critical part inside me that really kind of stopped me from sharing myself and sharing information and work. And it was around last year that I just decided to let it stop, and I wanted to let go. I just wanted to create, and I just wanted to post, and I wasn't looking for anything. And I think some people have to start like that. Stop being critical and just sharing. I'm very perfectionist, and yeah, I think you need to stop that perfectionism. And my perfectionism helped me in a lot of ways, but at some point you need to decide to just stop it and share your work with everyone. Yeah.
Okay. Ida, you have also a question here for you.
Yeah. How do you
I can
differentiate?
read it. Yeah. How do you differentiate concepts from storytelling while using AI in your process? How do you feed AI with your prompts?
Well, I actually have a whole workshop for that. It's a very long process, and I talk about everything. But some concepts that I create are mainly architectural, some are experiences, and I talk about all of them and how I develop these prompts, how I, think. These tools are something to think with. I use them as thinking tools. So it's not something that's gonna replace humans. I don't view them this way. I think of them as new tools of thinking, new tools of creating. And I definitely can see someday that we can design entirely within these tools. And of course, we need more control over them. At the moment, we don't have that amount of control. We need some serendipity, but also control. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So maybe we'll have here another question, and maybe then we'll wrap it up. So for Bayan now, how do you try to differ from other artists at the field? So because I think you can read.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fatma. I try to always look inwards. I still very often fall into the trap of getting distracted by what other artists I love are doing. And it's an endless cycle of, looking at what other people are doing, getting distracted. But then I always try to look back at why I'm doing what I'm doing and just look inwards. And like I said, I don't think you can go wrong with truth. I try to always speak truth, talk about no one can argue with my experiences. They're facts, they're truth. So I try to, maybe I'm scared of confrontation, which is why I don't share opinions or things like that. And I tend to stay safe and I stick with my experiences. But that's what I try to do. And it helps that, I don't know if anybody has kids here, but definitely document everything. And now everything's digital, but keep everything, because you never know how they can use it in the future. It helped me a lot with figuring out who I am. Looking to the past definitely helped. And then now I just try to apply the same principles to clients or to different people that I'm working with. So a lot of my work is actually extracting information from the client themselves. So sometimes they come to me thinking they know what they want. Half of my job is just getting to know them and getting to know why they're doing what they're doing before I even start the design work. And I like to have things, I don't like to design just for things to be pretty. I want to, or illustrate, I need things to have basis. So that's what another common thing is, I don't just want pretty things floating in the air. Things need to kind of be rooted in a concept or a story or a belief or something like that. So that's how I try to work. I hope I'm doing, I hope I continue to do this. Sometimes I feel my work's repetitive. I haven't figured out the solution for that yet. If anyone has any tips, please let me know.
Everybody feels that way about this stuff.
Yeah.
I do that. I feel the same way. And I try really hard to avoid that. So it's really, yeah.
I think it's also called consistency. So I think it's
yeah, you're right.
yeah. So thank you so much. I think you inspired all of us, and it was really, really lovely to have you here and to have you as speakers to the program. I hope, you can always reach to Ida and Bayan afterwards if you have more questions. And thank you again. And thank you everyone for being here. And I'll leave the word to Atalay for him to present the next steps. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Bayan, Ida. It was so amazing. I couldn't keep my eyes out of my screen. I really would like to even delve into more and more about what you're doing. It was really inspiring and insightful. Once again, thanks so much for sharing your night with us. And thank you, Rossana, for a great moderation. It was an amazing experience.